Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel. This is Business Connections Live with Steve Hyland.
Hello there and welcome to Business Connections Live, the programme for entrepreneurs, SMEs and business owners. Now, on today's show, we're going to be discussing common misconceptions about SEO. What does that mean? Search engine optimization is what we're going to be talking about today. And our guest on today's show is Bronwyn Williamson. She's the Managing Director of Adams Marketing Agency, an all-round good egg. And what she doesn't know about SEO is barely worth talking about. Bron, it's lovely to have you with us today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Tell us a little bit, first of all, about you, because it tends to be, dare I say this, the whole area of SEO, emails, websites, it's very male-dominated, isn't it?
I think that's becoming less so, actually. I think there's a lot more women in tech in general now, a lot of women in the industry, in marketing, and also a lot more sort of developers as well are coming up through the ranks.
So a changing industry and also really good careers out there as well,
yes,
I would imagine
definitely.
too.
Yes, definitely. I think things like programming and technology in the wider sense has been something that has been thought of as a bit of a male-dominated industry, but I think women are making great strides now and coming forward, and certainly the creative element to it as well is something that's quite attractive, I think.
How long have you been Managing Director of Adams?
I've been Managing Director for 3 years, but I've been with Adams for 15 years.
And what is your original background? Are you somebody that's been in marketing that went into the technology side, or are you somebody that sort of sees it all as one big tool?
I started as a designer, so I came in from a creative point of view, and then over the years become more and more interested in the technical aspect of it. So I guess I've kind of gone from one side to the other.
When you meet new clients, and because everybody would love to have a brand new website each and every day, I would imagine, but when they come to you and they've got their website, and because it's so easy now for anyone to design their own website, what are the big mistakes that you see? They walk in the door and they go, "Look at this, I've made this." What are the things that people get so wrong with it?
Sometimes it's just even the fundamental things, because it's so much easier now to build websites. It's a bit like when it was quite easy to have a publishing package. A lot of people decided that they were going to do their own newsletters and brochures and so forth, and it's not quite the same as having that sort of expert point of view. And I would say it's the same with websites now. So because somebody can technically build a website, it doesn't necessarily mean that they've got the marketing background or acumen to really make that website work for them. Sometimes it's just really simple things like making sure that your phone number appears on the site, or that you've got good data
How to
capture,
contact us.
how to contact us, call to action. There's a lot more that goes into a site than that, but sometimes when I look at a site that somebody's built, or perhaps somebody's had built for them, it's just those fundamental things are not even in place before you even start getting into the sort of things like your technical markup and schemas and the sort of...
Well, you're a designer. Do you think when people design their websites, do they start in the right place, or do they nearly start in the middle?
Yes, sometimes. With a good website, it's a process. There's two sides to making your website work online. One side is making sure that you've got good visibility, and that's really about things like how technically accurate the site is it to current best practice, have you got all of the different things in the right place to make the search engines find you. But then the other side to it as well is how attractive the site is, how sticky the site is. Are people going to keep coming back to it? Have you got engagement? Are you going to convert business on the site? So I always see it as a sort of two sides to the coin, really. One is about driving targeted traffic and the right type of traffic to your site, and the other is what happens on the site and how do you engage with people and how do you convert those users into customers.
When you look at a site, from your experience and your expertise, can you look at a site now and go, do you know what, that's not going to be particularly sticky?
Yes. but that's years of experience. So usually and also it's easier to see somebody else. It's always easier to see as an observer, isn't it? And a fresh pair of eyes. I think sometimes if you're in a business, you're very, very close to it, and you've built a website, perhaps there's been a lot of input from people within the organisation as well. You are almost too close to it. So it's much easier for somebody to come along with a fresh pair of eyes and to see the things that perhaps you can't see because you're almost too close to the site and what you're trying to say.
We've been through a number of incarnations of the different analysis of the different sites over the years. I mean, Google will bring out different rules. 5 years ago, perhaps, it was all about keyword stuffing, wasn't it? And sentences would make absolutely no sense, but they had all the keywords in there.
I'd say keyword density, yes.
But and that's changed now, isn't it?
Yes.
It's all about readability, and a percentage of your keywords been in there.
I mean, to some extent, it's the same as it always has been. As far as the search engines, and I'll use Google because they still have such a high percentage of volume, particularly in the UK and America and the rest of Europe. But really, it's always been about relevancy. It's always been about good quality content, and that hasn't changed. That's stayed consistent. What has changed is the way that the algorithms, if you like, the sophistication of the algorithms.
Now, what do you mean by that? Because people hear this being bandied around. What is an algorithm? What does it mean? And is it just one rule that you've got to obey and everything will be fine?
I wish it was as simple as that. No, basically, if you imagine it, Google's purpose is to provide the search criteria for you as a user. So when you go onto Google and you put your search term into Google, or you ask it a question, or you put something into the search bar, really what Google's trying to do is give you back the most relevant and accurate information based on that search that you've put in. So what Google does is it uses its algorithms to crawl the internet and to find the most relevant and the most useful information back to you. If you were using Google and every time you put a search term in, or quite frequently when you put a search term in, the sites that it was showing for you and the information that it was giving you didn't match your search query, even though Google is, you know, the big animal that it is, you would eventually give up and you'd start using other search, like Bing, for example, or Yahoo.
So this is their responsibility to their users, isn't it?
Exactly, yes, and that's always been the key, because if it's not relevant and it isn't useful to you, you'll stop using it. So all the algorithms is Google's way of ensuring that it's giving back its customer, if you like, its user, which is you and I, the most relevant and trustworthy information. And the algorithms are ways of going through the internet, if you like, finding websites, finding information so it can present that information back to the search.
Now, if you go onto Google and you look for what they're looking for, they do give you relatively clear instructions. They kind of say, need it to be readable, so think of it as being read by a human being. Don't keyword stuff, don't do all those kind of things. But is there a lot that they're not telling you?
There's an awful lot that they're not telling you.
Is that because they don't want people to cheat it?
I think the thing with Google is, if you're listening to the right people and if you're gleaning the right information, it will tell you a lot, but it's almost how you decipher that information. It's how your understanding of that information. So sometimes for somebody who perhaps isn't in the search industry, it can seem a little bit misleading, or it can kind of lead you perhaps down a slightly different path to one that's going to work for you in the way that it could. I also think that Google, there's an awful lot that Google doesn't tell you, and that's because they don't want people to start to be deviant. They don't want you to use black hat techniques. They don't want you to
said that.
the
So they
engines.
call this, don't they? We have black hat and we have white hat. What's
and
the
you
difference?
have grey hat as well. Just to
Right.
add that
So
into the mix.
black hat is...
Black hat is basically...
Is it black cat?
It's black hat, as in a cat.
As a cap?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Not a cat. Yes, basically, all black hat is, it's a way, anything that is divisive, anything that is misleading to the search engines. So old school versions of that would be things like white text on a white page, because the search engine will only pick up text. They're not interested in how pretty your site is. They're not really interested in how nice it looks. They're interested in being able to get the content and the information and the metadata out of it. So if you, for example, had white text on a white background, the user wouldn't be able to see it, but the search engines would. And that's kind of coming back to the bad old days of things like keyword cramming and overdense.
And people would do that?
Keywords. Yes, and things like doorway pages. So pages that exist for the search engines but are not there for the user. I mean, there's some very sort of old school basic ones which I very much doubt anyone would be using anymore, but there's lots of other ways that you can try and fool the search engines. Link building's another big one now. So,
well, there used to be a thing called, am I right in saying, link farms?
Yes, link
Because everybody
farms.
would talk about you've got to have backlinks to your website.
Yes.
But you could go out there and you could buy that.
Yes, I mean, you really shouldn't ever involve yourself in any of those bad practices. No sort of self-respecting SEO agency would ever use any black hat techniques. It's simply not worth it, because what will happen eventually is they may work for a short period of time, but as soon as Google's algorithms catch up with that technique, you'll find yourself going down in the search engines. If you're unfortunate enough to get a penalisation, if that's a filter or an actual manual one, that will really hurt you, and you could drop down 30 to 50 places in the search engines for that. Quite often though, what happens is you won't be penalised yourself, but if you've perhaps been using some black hat link building techniques, then the websites that your links are on will drop, and the link value will be worthless, and so your site may drop because it's not necessarily your site that's been penalised, but the techniques that you're using have become antiquated and found out by Google, so you'll
In
drop.
15 seconds, link value, what does that mean?
Well, one of the ways that Google looks at how relevant your site is on the page, so all the things that you can do to your website, and some of the things that Google uses to see determine the relevancy and value is off the page, and link building formulates part of an off-page strategy.
So in other words, I take it if there's a very successful website that links to my site, I get a bit of their success.
Yes, it's like that, yes. So if you have your brand mentioned, for example, on other websites, particularly good quality websites, if you have content that's gone out and is on those websites, then that will attribute a link weight back to you.
All right, then now hold that thought. We'll be back more in just a few moments' time. My guest on today's show is Bron Williamson. She's the Managing Director of Adams Marketing Agency. We're talking about all things good and bad about SEO, things like keywords. It's all coming up on this edition of Business Connections Live. Well, a great show today so far. I don't know about you, but loads of information, good, valuable information. I think, I muck around with websites, and to be honest with you, there is so much I just don't know. And every time I delve into it, I realise how much I don't understand and I don't know. And I think this whole thing about making your site SEO compliant is still so much magic. We're going to talk a little bit about keywords, a bit of research on that, and also some of the tools perhaps. Is that all right?
Yes.
Now, a couple of weeks ago, we had a fantastic guest on the programme, Jim McLaughlin from Axial. He came in to talk to us. He's a great guy. We were talking about content and why content these days is king. Doesn't matter how good you think your SEO and your website is, if you're not generating the right kind of content, well, nobody's going to, or content rather, nobody is going to go there, quite frankly. If you're dull and boring, it's a bit like going to the pub. If you're dull and boring, no one's going to come over to you and buy you a drink. If you are vibrantly exciting, then they're going to come over, they're going to buy you loads of drinks. That sounds like me last Wednesday, actually. 4 bottles later. Anyhow, let's look back at the show that we had with Jim McLaughlin, a fascinating show into why content is king. Jim McLaughlin on Business Connections Live. Now, on today's show, we'll be talking about why content is king, along with a whole host of other things. What you should be doing in your business to make it grow, to make it more successful. My guest on today's show is Jim McLaughlin, Managing Director of Axial Limited.
But I think that probably the key issue is that the world has changed and it continues to change. So lots of the tools that we used to use for marketing are either no longer valid or they're no longer enough. At one time, it was sufficient for us to say, we've got a great product, we've got a great solution, we've got a great system, and it can do great things for you. But because there is so much information available on the internet, on our own company websites, and crucially on sites where people can review the products and the services that they've bought, because there's so much information there, people are actually bombarded. A, they've got ease of access to information, and B, they're bombarded with information from lots and lots of different sources. So people are less willing to listen to me when I want to tell them how great the services are that Axial offers. They're much more likely to listen to one of their peers or to a trusted advisor. What do they want to see from me? What do they want to see from my customer? They want to see information that's going to be of help to them, that's going to be of use to them, that isn't going to try and drive them in the first instance to buy the product or the service that I'm selling, but will give them an idea of why should they be interested in this type of product or service. What are the media that you'll use to get that information out there? And that could be, depending on the business you're in, it could be television advertising, it could be newspaper and magazine advertising, it could be trade press advertising, but all of those areas of advertising are becoming less and less important as part of the overall mix because of the changes that the internet brings. So the key issue always comes back to how well do I understand my target audience? Because if I understand my target audience, I'll start to have a good idea of the kind of forums that they're likely to use. So now what we do is we'll take that specification and we'll give it to one of our researchers, and our researcher will create a much more targeted list from the web, and they'll use a number of different sources, but the key source that they'll use is LinkedIn. The key issue always is, now if you want to engage someone in a dialogue, you have to give them a reason to believe that they'll derive value from that dialogue. And that brings us back again to the content is king, and creating the kind of content that the people that you want to speak to will view as valuable and will view as worthwhile reading. For our customers, the most important social media channels are absolutely LinkedIn, and probably increasingly YouTube. There absolutely can be very much more to a CRM system than doing a mail shot. So CRM systems, and the name says it all, it's the customer relationship management. How do I manage that relationship in the most effective way possible? And one of the key things that a CRM system enables companies to do is to follow the whole journey from the first contact with a potential customer right through to that contact becoming a customer or deciding not to become a customer. Hi, I'm Jim McLaughlin from Axial. We're a business development company. What we've spoken about today is really around the importance of getting the right information to the right people. That's why content is king. It's increasingly important to be able to create content that will give people a reason to believe that they'll get value from the contact that you make with them and from the dialogue that you want to engage them in. If they don't see that there's going to be value, they're not likely to want to engage in that dialogue. Because content is really important, it's also important that you have subject matter experts within your organisation so that they can continue the good work that you've done with the content that you've created and continue to build on your image as a trusted partner and a provider of valuable information. If you've got a CRM system, the most important thing about making a CRM system work for you is to make sure that you have the right processes in place and the right incentives for people within your organisation to use that CRM system properly, and penalties for people that don't, because if you don't have the right information in your CRM system, you can't get the right results from it. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, honesty always pays in every business relationship. Don't oversell your product, your service, or yourself. Be absolutely honest about what it is that you can deliver, and then make sure that you can deliver that and perhaps a little bit more. That's the way to build trust.
Great show. If you hadn't had an opportunity to watch that one, I do suggest go to our website at businessconnectionslive.com and check it out. Jim McLaughlin there talking about content being king, and it really is. And that'll probably become even more evident as this particular program, all the words that they use from out for yourself, as this program progresses today. My guest on today's show is Bronwyn Williamson. She's the Managing Director of Adams Marketing Agency. We're talking about all things SEO. Sometimes it's an area that we hear bandied about, but it's something that we sometimes do very little about. Or maybe it's because we don't really understand what we're trying to achieve with that. How many businesses these days do you think, Bron, go out there and they try to do it themselves initially?
I think there's quite a few people that perhaps do it themselves or have an internal resource. I think one of the issues with that is there's so many different facets now to digital marketing. It's very difficult to find one person who can really specialise in all the different elements, which is why I think there's a strength to using an agency, because really what you're doing there is that you're engaging with a marketing partner and you'll really have at your fingertips then all the expertise that you'll need across the board. Also, a lot of the techniques now dovetail each other. So, for example, things like SEO, social media, content, they all work together really for the end result. So,
well, if I'm walking into an agency, then what are the questions do you think I should be asking the agency? I mean, we were talking about the stickiness of a website, the aesthetics of the way a site looks can actually be relatively easily attained, can't they? I mean, the software that's out there, but it's understanding, is the site truly working for me?
Yes, exactly. I think the most important question to ask when you're engaging with an agency is, does this agency have an understanding of my business? Can they really get under the skin of my business? Do they really understand what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to achieve, who my target audience is? Those are the first questions really that you need to ask for a successful website. If you get those things wrong, then even if you're ranking for a bunch of keywords, for example, those keywords might not necessarily be the right ones. They might not be attracting the right traffic. So you really have to go back to basics.
So when I talk to my agency then, what are the questions I should be asking them?
Well, the first thing you can do is have a look at the track record of the agency. A good agency will have case studies, they'll have a proven track record in terms of where they're getting their customers to rank, not just the ranking position, but the success of the website. So in other words, how is it working for their bottom line? How are they getting leads and inquiries? What's the conversion rate on the website? So those are the kind of questions that you can ask to get a gauge for, is the agency actually good at what they do? But then after that, it's about fit sometimes. It's about how does that feel? Do you feel that they are going to be your partner in this? Do you feel that they're behind your business? Do you feel that they have a good understanding of your business? And like I say, what it is that you're trying to achieve. If you've got that, then it becomes much easier, because obviously there are technical elements to SEO, but if you're using it in a marketing sense to get it to really work for your business, then you have to ensure that you're all on the same page really with what you're trying to get out of it.
Are there agencies, do you think, out there that can produce nice looking work but actually can't deliver the goods when it comes to a website that will convert?
Yeah, I often see, in fact we often get customers coming to us where they've had a website built, perhaps they've had that website built professionally, and whilst it might look nice on the surface of it, perhaps the technical element isn't there, perhaps it hasn't really been optimised correctly, perhaps it's been optimised but it's for the wrong keywords, so it's not driving that targeted traffic, or perhaps it's been optimised and it is targeting traffic in, but it's not converting because the elements that you need for a high conversion are not there on the website. So it's really having that sort of holistic view.
You mentioned earlier on about the conversions. When you talk about conversions, are you talking about people picking the phone up after they've been on your site and calling you, or are you talking about lead collecting in as much as emails, names and things like that, or do the two go together?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would say when you're thinking about changing your website or building a new site is to really have an understanding of what your objectives are. What do you want the website to achieve? So for example, it might be that you want to attract new business, it might be that you want to convert business, it might be that you want people to go through a certain pathway through the site for an actionable point at the end, such as picking up the phone and speaking to somebody or getting a quote, for example. So if you've got a good understanding of what you're trying to achieve, then it makes makes it much easier to ensure that you have a pathway through the site that ends up with that actionable point. So it might be things like having the phone number tracked on the website. It might be that you're tracking the inquiry forms. It might be that you have different inquiry forms for different people that are coming through if you've got different customer profiles coming onto the site. Often the other thing to think about as well, if you're building a new website, is internally how you're going to deal with the increase in needs and inquiries. Another pitfall that I often see is that when your website ranks highly and when you're driving a higher volume of traffic into the site and that traffic is converting, that conversion might be a phone call, for example. Now, if you don't have a very strong call centre, if you don't have people answering the phone correctly, if you don't have people tracking and monitoring where those leads and inquiries come from, you're sort of sending everything in, but you're not dealing with it internally as a business, and that can be quite a difficult challenge as well. So before embarking on that, it's quite good to have a think about how that's working in the business.
What about the development and design of the website? When it all started, you would have a home page. It was all very, well, for many sites, I suppose it was a home page and then a flat layer underneath it of everything else coming off it.
Yes.
Is it right now that there's a home page and maybe you have a number of different landing pages for different things? Is that the right way to be going? Should we be thinking away from the home page and more to landing pages?
Okay, there's really no right or wrong answer for that. It really depends on your business. It depends on the different facets of the business and what you want people to do. What I would say is that to start off with, think about your website, think about what you want it to achieve, think about your target audience, what is their profile, what do they look like. You may have a number of different types of people coming into the website wanting different things. Once you know that, you can start to plan out the customer journey, if you like. So the pathway through the site.
Journey.
The journey.
I thought we'd never get there.
Yes.
The customer journey, right,
Yes.
plan it out, right.
So, and that will, once you understand where you want people to go, really you should have a defined pathway through the site that perhaps starts on the homepage or perhaps starts on a different landing page, depends. And then you're taking people through that site, through to all the content that you think it's important and relevant for them to receive from the site. And then it should really end up in an actionable point. So that might be a quote form, that might be a phone call, that might be a live chat. It really depends on your business and how you want that to come through. So in terms of the structure of the site, that is very much dependent on what you're wanting the site to achieve, what information. Some people's websites might be information based only, so it might be that they're only going to go to the site if they've met somebody in person or they already have the brand is something that they know about. So really they're using that site to sort of glean information and to validate the things that they perhaps have already heard about the business. For other people, it might be that they may not know about the business at all and they don't have a very strong brand, but they're selling a product, so they want people to find the site under that particular product, in which case you have to make it very easy for the person to find the product and to buy the product without too much getting in the way of that sale.
And do you get people coming into you who don't think through the journey?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. That's quite a common mistake, actually. So they've got a website that looks quite nice. They might even have it so that it's ranking quite well, but it's just not converting. And what I mean by that is it's not getting enough. It might be that it's an e-commerce site and it's just not doing enough sales. It might be that it's a services-based industry and they're not just getting enough leads and inquiries from the site. So that's probably because they haven't given enough thought to the customer journey and they haven't given enough thought to the types of people that are coming onto the site and the information that they want to receive.
Are there still people out there, do you think, that are putting up brochure sites?
And
is there a place for them as well?
There is still a place. I mean, a good brochure site can be a very good business tool for you if it's used in the right way. Not all sites are e-commerce, not all sites are selling heavily on the site. Sometimes they are more information-based sites, and that's fine, but you still have to think about, I guess, the key marketing points, like what differentiates you from your competitors. Why would somebody want to come to you? Why should they choose you? What makes you different from somebody else? And also capturing that data as well, so that you're really getting the most benefit from the website. All
right, so we've sat down, we've got our customer journey now laid out, we know where they're going. We also know the kind of action that we would like them to take. Now we move on to the thorny subject of keywords and things like that. How do you decide what what your keywords are. Many people sort of say, are you ranking for your keywords? I don't know. I mean, and most people won't know whether they're ranking for their keywords if they even knew what the keywords were that they were meant to be ranking. So how do you start with keywords?
Well, there is a school of thought now that would say that ranking isn't important and keywords are not important. And there's an element of truth to that. But of course, keywords are important in the sense that you are still wanting to drive that targeted traffic to your site. So the first thing you need to do is think about your customers, think about what terms that they might use to find your product or your services.
All right, so give us an example. I sell strawberry ice cream cones, to be specific.
Okay.
So that's what I sell. I sell strawberry ice cream in cones.
Okay.
So where would you start with that?
Okay. Well, first of all, you need to think about who's buying those strawberry cones. Are you selling them direct to a consumer? Are you selling them trade? Are you selling them in bulk? Do you need them?
I'm selling them to consumers. So it's business to customer, B2C.
B2C, okay. And then you might want to think about the types of people that you don't want to sort of come along to the site as well. So, for example, if you just put in a search phrase such as strawberry ice cream cones and your website comes up at the top of the search engines for that, that's great. It's what I would call a generic phrase because it describes what you do. But you might have other aspects to that as well, like geographically. You may only be able to ship your ice cream cones out to a certain radius. You might only be able to ship them to mainland UK. So it might be that you have people that are collecting the ice cream cones, but they're only prepared to travel a certain distance. So it might be that you might want to...
Because it would melt.
Because it might, yes.
Yes, yeah.
So it might be that you have strawberry ice cream cones London, for example.
Right.
So it's a longer phrase, what we'd call a longer tail phrase, but it's more targeted to the traffic that you're bringing in.
So go on, give me an example.
Well, I guess if you just put the word strawberry in, that would be terrible because it's
that
single
wouldn't
word,
work, would it?
single word phrase. So many different reasons why somebody might put strawberry into the search engine. So that would be a bad example. Strawberry ice cream, again, still not really long enough because it's still not targeted enough for you. Strawberry ice cream cones, yes, we're getting there now. It's describing your product or your service. But then if you wanted, you could put strawberry ice cream cones London in or strawberry ice cream.
So really
stone.
narrowing it down.
Yeah, and then you're really starting. So it's a longer tail phrase, so there's less traffic volume, most
All right.
likely. But it's more
Hold
targeted.
that thought. We're going to talk more a little bit about keywords and how you should be going about getting your keywords in your mind's eye sorted out for your business. My guest on today's show is Bronwyn Williamson, Managing Director of Adams Marketing Agency. More to come on Business Connections Live. Well, that's really interesting. I can't wait to get back to the ice cream cones. It is fascinating. Just a quick bit on that. Mm-hmm. So as we make is there a point where your long tail search or keyword becomes too long, too specific?
It's not really that it becomes too specific. It's more about thinking about how people are going to search. So the obvious thing would be to have strawberry ice cream cones and then the area in which you can deliver or people can collect from you. But then there are other things that come into play as well. So people do a lot of research online now, and the way that people search has changed. The advent of things like Siri, for example, and voice search. So somebody might be speaking into their iPhone and say, how can I find a strawberry ice cream cone? Or what strawberry ice cream cones should I be purchasing? So you might want to think about having content on your site and also keywords on your site for those more research-based phrases as well.
Right.
So things like how can I find a good strawberry ice cream cone, or cheap strawberry ice cream cones, or quality strawberry ice cream cones. So you might want to build in phrases that...
You know, I could eat one right now. Yeah. All right, listen, we'll come back. We'll talk a little bit more about keyword research in just a moment. I think it's probably the big area that a lot of small businesses really just don't understand. We've already talked about the fact that if you are going to be working with an agency, of course you can do all this yourself if you want to, if you've got the time. But remember, if you are working with an agency, you want to build a relationship with the agency, and that agency's got to understand you. But probably just as importantly, you've got to understand the way they work, because it's garbage in, garbage out. So if you don't give them the right information, they're not going to be able to deliver on what you're asking them to do. So it's a little bit of thought, a little bit of sitting back for a moment. We're going to talk more about keyword research in just a few moments' time. By the way, if you are enjoying today's show, How engaging is this? Now, I've got a thing about video online. I think if you produce engaging content, people will watch it if they're hungry for it. You could be looking to find out today about SEOing your website. So you've come here and you would have found Bron really fascinating. The way she's talked, what she said, the advice she's already given. And you are prepared to watch the rest of what she's got to say. You want to hear what else she has to say. Now, fancy doing that for your business. Say you could engage your customers, your audience, with a program just like this. We'll show you how to go about doing that if you come along to our studios. The other thing that will happen, of course, is that sometimes you've got to come up against the media yourselves. And how do you represent yourself to the media? How do you handle the media? How do you sort yourself out in an interview? What are the key things that you've got to remember? We've put together a training course for businesses just like yours so that you can be an expert when it comes to handling the media. And to tell you why it's such a good course, here's one of the people that came and asked us recently.
I'm James Griffin from Iris Software, and my team have just completed the How to Handle the Media workshop. It was a really great course, it was really fun, and it was a really unique way for them to polish their presentation skills and learn how to answer difficult questions under pressure. So I'd highly recommend this to anybody that values those skills and really wants a great day out with their team.
Now, if you'd like more information about that, all you got to do is contact us here at Business Connections Live. Here comes all the information that you need. Get your pen and paper out and start writing this down. I'm telling you what to do now. I am in charge. If you want to email us, then you can email us here at studio at Business Connections Live. I thank you very much indeed. Also, if you'd like to give us a call, we'd love chatting to people about this because it allows us to talk through what you probably need. Some people come in and they say, actually, really what we're looking for is we're looking for experience in the radio environment. We're looking for experience on the field recordings, on location recordings, all those kind of things. We can put together a course that is specifically honed to your needs. So studio at businessconnectionslive.com, or if you want, you can give us a call on 01784 256 777. That's our telephone number. And if you want to follow us with our Train of Consciousness, then you can follow us on, you like that? Train of Consciousness on Twitter at BCL Business TV. There you go. And if you want to have a word, you need to talk to myself or to Linda Bazant. We'll put you straight. We'll sort you out. We'll get you there. But we do a whole range of different services for business, everything from corporate production all the way through to media training. If you need media for your website or you just need to get your people ready to get out there to face the media, then we can help you out here at Business Connections Live. My guest on today's show is Bronwyn Williamson. She's the Managing Director of Adams Marketing Agency. We've been talking about what you need to be expecting from your agency when you go and you talk to them about your brand new website. It's probably the most exciting piece of marketing content that you're going to have within your business. It could nearly be the centre of everything. Your brochures may be developed from it or off it anyway, at least, so there's a connection there. Your telesales may well be using it as your social proof when you drive people there to show them what you do. And then as a piece of, well, just very clever technology, it can collect names, it can collect emails, it can drive people to your telephone numbers. And sometimes I think we look at it as just a bunch of pretty pictures. By the way, do pretty pictures work?
They do in terms of engagement, yes. So as I was saying earlier, when you've driven the traffic to the site has to be engaging. So the content has to grab you. It has to be interesting to the user, and it also has to look really good as well. People have a very short attention span online.
Now, do they really? But if you've got the greatest site in the whole world, or you get, last night I watched 2 hours worth, shows you how sad I was, 2 hours worth about the old pirate DJs out on the North Sea. 2 hours I watched because I was engaged. I know I need to get out more, don't I? I was really engaged with the content. Are we not all striving to engage our audience?
Yes, definitely. Engagement is a really big thing. And you can tell how engaged your audience is with you in a number of ways, just through Google Analytics. So you can look at how long people are spending on the site, how long they're spending on each page of the site. If you've got video content, if you've got infographics, are people staying on the site long enough for them to have seen those things? You can also see your pathway through the site, for example, your user flow. So one of the things, and it touches on what we were talking about earlier about the landing pages, most of the time your homepage is likely to be the page that ranks first, and it tends to be the entry point through to the site. But ideally what you would want is to pull people into what we would call the deeper page content as well.
Well, I was going to say, a lot of people seem to concentrate purely on their landing page, don't they? And they try to get the landing page ranked to the detriment of everybody else.
Well,
or all the other pages, so they don't seem to bother or work as hard with the other pages.
Really, you should be working just as hard on the other pages as well. Quite often, if we're working with a client, then yes, their homepage would rank, but you would also see their deeper page content ranking as well, but for those more specific and targeted phrases. So if there's an area, if you have a product, for example, on your site that is, say for example with your ice cream cones, if you had ice cream cones but you had different flavours, so strawberry, chocolate, etc., you would want to have a page for each of those flavours, and so you can optimise that page specifically for that. And if somebody came through and wanted chocolate ice cream cones, for example, ideally they wouldn't go through to the home page, they would go straight through to the page that's about chocolate ice cream cones. And if you can do that, then you're likely to get a higher conversion because you've presented them with the more targeted information that they're looking for.
There used to be this whole thing about the number of clicks to get to where you wanted to go.
Yes.
Does that still stand?
Well, I think most people tend to follow what we would call the 3-click rule, which is whereby you can get to wherever you need to go in the site within 3 clicks. Really, that's due to, as I say, slight laziness and also the impatience of people online. We tend to have much higher sort of benchmarks and much higher expectations of a website nowadays. So if we are in a site and it hasn't got a very clear pathway and we can't find what we're looking for, we can become very irritated with that. And unless it's something that we really desperately need to find the information and there's a compelling reason for us to stick with it, most of the time we'll end up bouncing back to Google, going through to another site and seeing if they can give us the information that we need.
When that happens, is that then when Google starts to work against your site? If people go on and you don't have high retention, they go on, you're there for a couple of seconds, you go back to either the Google search once again. Does that actually now work against you?
Well, yeah, I mean, Google will look at things like a high bounce from the site. So it will also look at actionable points as well, and if they are being, if they're working for you. So if you have a website that has a lot of traffic that's hitting your site and then coming back off again, that's going to be in detriment really to the site and could affect things like your ranking. But more importantly, it means that people aren't engaging with that content. They're not really finding what you'd like them to find from the site. So from that point of view alone, it's worth looking at.
All right, we talked about our keywords. When you put those keywords in, are you trying to rank on the individual words, or are you trying to rank on the words as a phrase?
Okay. It's kind of both really. What you're really looking to do is drive people to your site that would be interested in what you have to say and what you're selling or your products or your services. So when you're thinking about your keywords, there might be some obvious ones if you've got products, for example, or particular services that might work for you, and I would call those more generic phrases. But you're also trying to work out why somebody would come onto the site, and there's different phases, if you like, in the buying cycle. So ideally you would look at a mixture of shorter and longer tail phrases, of information-based phrases, of research-based phrases, as well as those kind of hard-hitting product phrases. So really what you're trying to do is capture somebody at all stages of that buying cycle. So when they're in their research phase, it might be things like what's the best ice cream cone, or how ice cream cones made, or where can I find a good ice cream cone, and things like that. And that's often where you'll find information like reviews or blogs or things that are really telling you about what might be a good sort of idea. And then once you're ready to actually buy the ice cream cone, you'll notice your search might change slightly. So it might be something like ice creams to buy, or buy ice creams now, or cheap ice cream cones or something, because you've kind of gone into that element of the buying cycle when you're ready to purchase. And then it's about giving the person your product, putting that in front of them and making it easy for them to buy on the site.
If anyone's tuning in right now, they think we're selling ice creams, don't they? What about tools? Are there any tools out there that will help us? There's a lot of people that have built their business websites. Probably you have done this at home. You've built your business website on WordPress or something like that. I suppose today of the traditional HTML Dreamweaver base kind of website is not as popular as it was, but WordPress, very, very robust platform to build your sites on. Are there any tools that you can use in there that will help you optimize at least your keyword searches? Is there anything you would suggest?
Yes, I think with the advent of open source CMS, so whether that's something like WordPress or Drupal, there's a whole bunch of them, they're very good. We like open source because it means that you don't have intellectual property issues that you might have had if you'd have gone with a bespoke content management system. And there certainly are tools that you can use that would help you. One of the things I would mention though is that nowadays with SEO, it's not just about keywords, it's not just about putting the right keywords in a site, although that is an element of it.
Are you leading on the content now, the actual written word that's on the page?
Well, there's also an element of the technical markup of the site. It's Google will use your website and will go through your website in a certain way, and really the build of the site is hugely important to the success of it. So it's things like having the information in the right place for Google to be able to understand what it is that you're trying to say.
But doesn't WordPress do that for you anyway?
It does and it doesn't. I think so often you will look at a website that's perhaps been built by somebody that doesn't have the expertise in search, for example, and it might be that they haven't used the schemas correctly, it might be that they haven't got the correct technical markup in the site, so they're not using the site as well as they could to signpost the search engines.
All right, then do help us out. So when you say markup, what do you mean by that?
Well, the way that the website is built technically, so Google's really looking to come into your site and scan through it, looking at, it can't see the images, it can see alt tags, but it can't see the images. So it will go to certain places in your site and look for information. So the way that you mark the site up in terms of the code and the technical build will tell Google what you're trying to achieve. And then you get into things like the meta, for example, and the tagging on the site as well. So,
all right, stop there for a sec. I've heard about meta tags. Did
yes.
you just Now, I heard that the meta tags aren't important anymore. Is that? And what is a meta tag for that matter?
Well, I think it depends how you look at it. I mean, certainly at Adams, we like to tick all the boxes. So things like alt tags are less important than other ranking factors.
An alt tag is a
tag that you'd attribute to your pictures.
So this means that if somebody who is partially sighted is looking at the website and they're using one of these voice systems,
if you use
it will read
Browse
that
Aloud.
content, that alt tag.
Yeah, if you use Browse Aloud or use a screen reader, then often your accessibility, your disability accessibility on the site will give you quite a good indication of how the search engines are looking at the site as well, because it's scanning through the site and it's looking for text. So for example, if you have a picture of something and you have your alt tag, that will tell you what the picture is, because obviously the search engines cannot see the picture and neither can a screen reader.
Right. What else should we be considering? No, I was just finding something else. So what else should we be considering then? So when it comes to markup, so we've talked about alt tags. What else should we be?
Well, there's a variety of different things. I think, for example, you've got your title tags, you've got your description tags. There is something called a keyword tag, but I would avoid using that now because it's not a ranking factor to Google, and in fact, Bing can see that as a bit spammy. It's also giving a list of all your keywords to your competitors as well, which might not be the
people
best
still
idea.
seem to do that anyway, don't they? And
yes.
you go in, you put your keywords that you're trying to be searched for, and of course you can just strip them from other people's websites, the more successful ones.
Yeah, most people now wouldn't be using a keyword tag, but it is something that I do see people using quite a bit. It used to be a ranking factor for Google, but it isn't anymore. The description tag is quite an interesting one because although it's not a ranking factor, I would see that as a little advert for your site, a little bit like a pay-per-click advert.
And if you don't fill it in, it takes the first paragraph, doesn't it?
Yes, if you don't fill it in, or if Google example, doesn't like what you filled in, it will just either pull some text from the site that it feels is appropriate, or it'll even kind of rewrite some of your tags for you sometimes, which can be...
I'm going to ask you in a few moments' time about that. I mean, we use a thing called Yoast. Is that, you know, marks out of 10 for Yoast?
I like Yoast. I think it's a really good tool. It makes it very easy to put your meta into the site, but you just have to be mindful that that is its limitation. It's going to help you to put information into the site that you need to have, but it's not going to look at the site as a whole, and you know, it's not going to do your keyword research for you.
All right then. More to come in just a few moments' time from Bronwyn Williamson here on Business Connections Live. Fascinating. Yoast, gosh, that is really hard work. I mean, it's a great tool as well. I hope you found today's programme useful. Still more to come from Bronwyn in just a moment, or Bron as she likes to be called by her friends. So it's Bronwyn then. And more to come from her in just a moment. Actually, while we're talking about tools, probably a very opportune moment to look at a particular tool that we use here at Business Connections Live. Now, don't be expecting miracles if you are a business and you're using YouTube. YouTube is a fantastic technical platform, I believe, when it comes to hosting your video, regardless of where you want it to go, from iOS all the way through to Windows devices. YouTube will deliver your video, and it'll deliver it in the right resolution at the right time, pretty much reliably. I think only recently, I think there was one or 2 days where they were off for an hour or something, but YouTube in the main, absolutely fantastic for delivering your content. However, sometimes it can all become a little bit confusing, particularly if you're trying to rank your video. Now, I think in B2B and B2C, a lot of the time, the ranking of the video isn't important. It's the fact that you can technically deliver your video and then let your website do the ranking for what you're trying to do for your audience. But if you do want to rank your videos on YouTube, then you do need a little bit of help. And one great tool for doing that is a tool called TubeBuddy. And we'd like to thank TubeBuddy because they support the program, so thank you very much to them. It is a terrific tool. And just to give you an indication, actually, what you've got here, I'll just pop down. There's some of the people who use it. It's got a whole range of productivity tools that you can use. Everything from advanced video embedding, animated GIF generator, all sorts of things there. Bulk copy cards. That's great. You want to do a different campaign on all your videos. Say you've got 100 videos. With that one feature alone, you can update all your individual videos by putting the same message on each and every one of them. So a whole load of tools there to help you optimize what you're doing. Then you've got the video SEO tools. Caption generator, tag explorer, tag sorter, the right tag in the right place, what your search ranking is going to be. A/B testing as well about the different messages that you put on your thumbnails, for instance. Then you've got your promotional tools, your Community Connect description promotion, featured video promotion, share tracker on Twitter, and then your research tools. You can go and see what is trending at the moment, what the health report of your video is. Everything is there that you need to actually maximize your return when it comes to using YouTube. The one thing it's worth getting for, if for no other reason, is that with one click you can move your videos from YouTube, not move them, but copy them from YouTube to your Facebook page. It used to be there originally. Now with one click, there it is. It's in TubeBuddy, and it makes it very easy. Now, of course, that's not saying that all content for all platforms is the same. And each platform, listen to me, each platform deserves its own specific content because it's a different audience, but it does make things a lot easier. If you want to find out more about TubeBuddy, of course, you can go to tubebuddy.com, or you can go to our website. It is an affiliate link. We'll own up to that. You can go to our website at businessconnectionslive.com. Just find your way down the page and you'll find a link to TubeBuddy on the page there. And good luck with using it. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest on today's show is Bronwyn Williamson, Managing Director of Adams Marketing Agency. We've talked about all sorts of things on this particular edition of the programme. It's whistled all over the place. I suppose really it's just tying off the end there of optimisation of our website. We've looked at the tags, we've looked at descriptions, we've looked at keywords. Is there anything else I should be considering?
I think it's probably worth considering what's happening off the page as well.
What do you mean by that?
Well, there's two sort of elements really to search. You've got what happens on your website, so if you like, what you control. So it's how the website's built technically, it's looking at things like the metadata, it's looking at things like the content. And so once you've got that organised, and that should really be the first point of call. But after you've done that, then it's worth looking at what's happening off the site. In other words, what's happening on other people's websites that's driving traffic to your site or is driving link value back to your site as well.
What do you think, if I want to drive people to my site, what's a good way of doing it? Is it, okay, I've optimized my site, but is it writing blogs and then distributing the blogs using RSS feeds and things like that? So getting my train of consciousness out there further? Or can I use social media, the thing like Twitter and things like that? Are they just as effective?
Well, there's a whole range of different things that you can do, and to some extent it does depend on your target audience, where they are. Marketing really is about putting yourself and your products in front of the customer in the space that they are. So if you've got an audience that is using LinkedIn or using Facebook or using Twitter, then yes, it would make sense to put yourself out into that space and use those channels. But really there's another element as well, which we like to call content marketing, which is really about putting your content out there to some extent for a wider audience to see and to come back in, but also in the interests of helping with your ranking as well. If you can have a number of good quality links, for example backlinks back to your site, that's going to help with your ranking position. But also if you've got some really good quality content that's going out there, then also you're driving people back to your site as well and building your brand equity online too.
And do you think that's an area that people miss out?
Yes, I do. I think it's an area that people perhaps don't have such a great understanding of. And a lot of the time people can spend, I mean, blog is an area which is quite interesting to look at because it's an area that's been abused quite a lot to some extent, and so Google is finding new ways of looking at blogging.
Is this when people will have a piece of content and then they repurpose it?
Yeah, so things like guest blogs, you have to be a bit careful with that nowadays. It's something that Google is, quite interested in delving into because, like I say, it has been abused quite a lot in terms of providing link value. So writing kind of thin content blogs that have not a lot of relevancy to you and just kind of posting them out to, all and sundry is probably not the best idea. However, writing really good quality blogs or writing content that might appear somewhere that's going to be of real interest to your audience is still very sort of worthwhile. Also, I tend to find that some people can be writing blogs at a rate of knots, driving themselves a little bit mad just to put lots of blog content on the website. But if that's not linked to the website appropriately, then Google is literally seeing that as a separate entity, so it's not adding the value that it should to the site. And then also, in addition, if those blogs, if the content's not being particularly well read, then it can be a little bit of a waste of time. However, if you've got a good quality blog and then you write an article about the content of that blog and you put that out across an industry leading website, for example, and then bring people back into the blog that you've written.
So you're saying writing blogs about blogs, are you?
No, I think I think if you've written something that's of real interest to your audience, and then perhaps you've written an article and that's gone out to perhaps an industry leading website, then it's fine to bring people back in as a link to your blog so they can find out more about how you see and what your understanding is of that particular issue, and that can work quite well.
So there are a whole host of things. I suppose the thing is that people will look at websites and they think that that's the be all and end all, isn't it?
Yes.
I've made my website, I've done a bit of optimization on it. Come on, I'm waiting for that traffic. And that really isn't going to be the case. It's more and more competitive out there.
It is, yeah. It's very competitive. Most people now are aware of online visibility and the importance that has on the business. Most people are aware that if your site ranks highly in Google, that it has almost like a PR effect, because if you go to Google and you look for something, there tends to be a feeling that the sites that rank at the top are good quality and are more trustworthy, and I think people are generally aware of that now. So of course what's happened is it's become a very competitive market. Everybody's trying to get their site to rank, everybody's trying to build that engaging content, so it's really how you can steal a march on your competitors, how can you make sure that you're doing that better than your competitors, and if you can get that right, then it can be very beneficial to your business.
Now, I know this is nearly another programme, what I'm about to ask, but Google recently have changed the look of the search page.
Yes.
And pay-per-click, the advertising has
Yes.
moved from the right-hand sidebar. We've now got
Yes.
paid advertising and pay-per-click at the top of the page. And at the bottom of the page, it seems to be all around the
Yes.
content that is for free in there. Is pay-per-click still a significant when it comes to ranking your website, or is it just an instantaneous effect that will then wear off once you stop buying the pay-per-clicks?
Well, of course, that move by Google has been quite controversial in the search industry. Hasn't been liked by a lot of people, and it's interesting. Be interesting to see in the future how far they push that, and what knock-on effect that will have in terms of the behaviour of searching. So, for example, if the homepage becomes flooded with pay-per-click, it might be that people start going straight to page 2, for example, because they don't want to have the adverts. Of course, when you're looking at a mobile, given the fact that about 49% now of sales are made on a mobile phone.
A lot of the page is taken up with
and a lot
pay-per-click,
of, well,
isn't
it's what we would call above the fold on a mobile phone. Now, the first thing that you will get is the advertising, and you will have to scroll down to see the natural search. So it's interesting to see, how that works moving forward. But certainly with pay-per-click, it does have its place in the marketing mix. It's worth bearing in mind that it doesn't add actual value to your website like natural search would. Still, natural search is the most trusted, so you'll find that if your website appears in the natural search, because it's more trusted and because people know it's not advertising, you will get more clicks from it. And in the longer term, although it's not necessarily free to appear there, it's free to appear there from Google's point of view, but of course you do have to put some effort and some perhaps invest some money into appearing there. But all of the work that you do onto your site actually is retained within the website. So once you've got yourself to a top spot from the natural side, you can move on to other things because it should really anchor itself in and hold its place. Whereas with advertising, of course, once you stop your advert, you will disappear from the page. So it can be very expensive.
And be aware.
And be aware.
Listen, the hour is nearly up, you'll be pleased to hear. And what we always do is we always ask our guests to do some key takeaways before they walk out the door.
Sure.
We won't let you out the door unless you do. Camera number 1 is the camera that you're going to be looking at. Straight down camera number 1.
Okay.
Please do say who you are and where you're from. And the airwaves are all yours.
Thank you. I'm Bronwyn Williamson from Adams, and I'm the Managing Director there.
Okay, and the key points you want, the takeaways?
Oh, okay. Key takeaways. I would say for somebody watching this show who is attempting to SEO their site, or it's something that they're thinking of doing, there's some sort of fundamental things that you should take into account. One is to spend a proper amount of time on your keyword research. That's so important to get that right. Don't put the keyword tag in. It's not a ranking factor anymore. Don't look at page rank. Again, it's not a ranking factor. It hasn't been since 2013. Look at domain authority instead. It's much better. There are about 100 different ranking factors that go into domain authority, but you can find the domain authority of your website. There's lots of free tools that you can use to do that. Another good thing to do is to have a look at how your site is being picked up by Google. And again, if you Google cache my site, you'll be able to find out exactly how the search engines are looking at your website, because it will show you the information that they're picking up, and that's quite interesting to do because sometimes it can give you a completely different view to what the user's seeing. So that would be another thing that I would recommend. But probably the thing that I would look at that's most important is when you're thinking about your website, whether that's building a website or optimizing the site, is to really choose a marketing partner that you feel understands your business and can get behind your business, so that you can really meet your business objectives with the website. It doesn't just become a simple brochure site that sits there, doesn't attract traffic and doesn't convert and doesn't help you to meet your objectives for your bottom line.
Fantastic. It's interesting. I was at a meeting this morning and I was talking to a few people there, and I asked how many people actually do use video on their website, and something like 80% of the people in the room said yes. And then I said, well, when was the last time you changed it? Oh, 4 or 5 years ago. And it does seem that this is a living, breathing thing, isn't it? Websites, it's, getting your information out there. This is something that you've really got to concentrate on, and it's a full-time job.
Yes, definitely. I mean, digital marketing is interesting because it never sits still. It's always changing, which is one of the reasons why it interests me so much, because it does keep you on your toes. but you have to be careful you don't get left behind. Technology changes, algorithms change, the way that people use the web as well changes, and the information they want to get from it and how they search changes as well. So really, it's a constant constant upkeep, really.
And in 15 seconds, so Google will be mucking things about again later on this year with another update. Is it Penguin we're on at the moment?
Oh gosh, well, it does make you sound a little bit like you're having a zoo when you start talking about Google. We've got penguins and pandas and hummingbirds and goodness knows what flying around. It's quite interesting that we've got a new one, which is our mobile Geddon, so at least it wasn't animal-based. Just a little note for anybody there that is concerned about mobile Geddon. In May, Google are about to push out something that's going to enhance that and make it even more important and stronger. So if anybody out there doesn't yet have a responsive website, which is Google's preferred template, please do something about that, because you will find that your site will drop on the mobile search if you don't.
All right, listen, this has been absolutely fascinating. If you want to find out more about Bronwyn and also the rest of the gang, Adams, you can go to their website. I've got it on my machine right here. Actually, that's very strange. It says go to my PC, which is not the right site. But there is the website. What is the URL for your website?
Adams.uk.com.
And there it is. So you can get all the information that you need simply from there. Interesting use. You'll find out more about it. My guest on today's show has been Bronwyn Williamson. She's the Managing Director of Adams Marketing Agency. A real insight into what you should be doing when it comes to SEOing your website. If you're not doing it, you should be. And remember, if you do it and you do it well, then you're going to reap the rewards. Hope you've enjoyed today's show. Thank you very much for watching. And that practically wraps up the show. Shall I do the housekeeping? I shall do the housekeeping. I shall tell you who's coming up on the program in the next couple of days, or the next couple of weeks. On next week's show, our guest will be Nikki Creel with an update on social media. That really ties in well with what we've been talking about today. Nikki Creel, an old friend of the programme, and we're looking for, well, she's not old personally, but you know what I mean. She'll be coming in next week and talking to us. Coming up in the next few weeks, we've got Dan Spicer. He used to be at Hootsuite. He's now on social media productivity tips, growth hacks and lead generation tactics. He's a man that really does some really good shows there actually coming up. If you are in business and you're using social media, you may think you're doing very well using it. Those two people, Nikki and Dan, will really show you the ins and outs of how you maximize your return when you're using social media. What do people say about Twitter? It's like sticking a message on somebody's windscreen on a windy day, isn't it? It's there for a second and it's blown away. Don't forget, if you'd like to sponsor the programme, you know, is get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live. And you can also enjoy the programme on local TV, Cambridge TV, Freeview Channel 8 and Virgin 159. Till we do it all again, thank you very much. Anita, we'll roll those credits. Thank you very much. Credits are rolling. Why don't we do it again next Monday live here on the air? Till then, have yourself an absolutely fantastic week. And from Bronwyn and myself, Steve Holland, have a successful and get onto that website and get it working properly for you. Till then, bye for now. Bye-bye.